Everybody doing? Good. Okay, we got a couple people. Well, my name is Tyler. I'm the youth ministry director here. You might be wondering, where is Isaac, Pastor Isaac, and where is Pastor Jason, and Gord and Pastor Phil and all of a bunch of our other leaders? And the answer is they are on a leadership trip on the other side of Canada right now. So we can be praying for them. They're having a really awesome time today. Pastor Isaac's going to be preaching at the church down there this afternoon, so that's going to be really good. But I am glad that everybody is here, and I'll be giving the message for today. And I actually have something that I'm kind of excited to say. This is like a really relieving thing for me, because I've been learning when I've been preparing for this message that I really have no power to be able to really like do a great job at this or help us follow the gospel. And sometimes, it can feel like there's that burden or that weight. We all have things that we're responsible for, and we try to do it in our own strength. And I've just been relieved today that it's not really on me, and it's God's power at work. And that's what we're going to be talking about a bit today. But let's get started. So I'm going to start with, if we could get that first slide up there, I'm going to start with a short summary of the story of Job. So some of you may have heard of Job before. He was a man who lived a long time ago in the land of Uz. And so it was said about Job, he was like the most righteous of the land. That was actually what God said about Job. He was the most righteous guy in his place, Though it said that he was the most righteous of all the people in the East where he lived. And, he did all the good things. He followed God. He had, tons of stuff. He had, hundreds of thousands of camels, which is, a big deal in Job's time. And he had a family, and he had a wife, and he had all this stuff. And in the story of Job's life, all of Job's stuff is taken away. In the course of a day, he loses everything that he has. He loses all of his family except for his wife. He loses all of his kids. They all die, and he loses all of his possessions, all of his houses, all of his camels, all of his everything. He's left with absolutely nothing. And then, the day after that, then he himself, loses all the strength in his body, and he loses his health. He gets covered in sores. He's just ridiculed with pain. And if you've ever read the book of Job, it's a long, hard book to read about Job grappling with this question. This is kind of the summary of it. Why? He's asking through all of this suffering. He's asking, why God? Why is this happening to me? And he just has these intense moments of despair, where there's this problem that we all have to face in this world that we find, and it's that there's all of this intense suffering. So many things that we face are not the way that they are meant to be. And so you might be thinking in your life, I've been thinking for my life, that there's so many things that are so painful. And so you can think in your own life of those things that have just been really hard for you, excruciatingly hard sometimes. And we might think, what is the point of this? What is the meaning of this overwhelming suffering? Maybe it's so many things are hard. Like a heartbreak. Has your heart ever been broken before? I was thinking about this. Why does that hurt so much? Something like a heartbreak, it's so excruciatingly painful. And so it could be something you've experienced, or the loss of a loved one. Somebody who passed away, or even somebody who moved that you're not really in touch with, or you're not able to connect with anymore. Or maybe there's things in your past. Maybe We've all been unseen before, or not heard by the people around us, or maybe we were neglected, or maybe we were abandoned, or all the times that we hurt the people that we love, or the people that we love, they hurt us. There's all these things that we struggle against, and Job, in his life, he struggles against this. He thinks, what is this all for? What is going on here? The world that the world that Job lived in, and the world that I live in, and the world that we all live in, is not the way that it's supposed to be. And Job is just crying out to God in this whole book, saying, why? What is happening? And he comes to this place where he's just like, he's in dust and ashes. He's just lying there, and he's just completely laid bare before God. And God finally talks to him. God finally gives him, he speaks to him. And the thing that is very interesting about what God tells him is God doesn't actually, unfortunately, he actually doesn't tell Job why he was suffering. His response is he tells Job who he is. And if you've never read it, we're not going to read it today, but if you get the chance to read God's response to Job, he explains to Job all of the things that he has power over, all of the things that he is in control of, all of his wisdom. He starts to describe to him how he is running the world in behind the scenes. He starts to show him how he's taking care of all the animals, how he created the earth, how he speaks, and he talks about things like he's the one who tells the lightning where to strike, and he's the one who's doing all these things. And he tells Job, I'm working things out. I'm working things out in this world that you don't understand and you don't know and you can't see, but I am working things out. And then there's this one section where he talks to Job, and he tells Job about his own majesty. God is telling him like how powerful he is, how he's the judge of the world, how he's the one who's in control. And he says to Job, he basically tells to Job, he says, you are powerless to save yourself. Your own right hand cannot save you. And so no matter how much Job struggles and tries and wants to grapple with the world being a better place, Job comes to the realization that his own right hand cannot save him. He is completely and utterly powerless in the face of God. And so that's what our first point is right there. It's right there. Your own right hand can't save you. There's nothing that we have, as much as we would like to try to fix the world, to right the things that are wrong, and make everything better. We're utterly powerless to do this. And that's the conclusion that Job comes to, and he has to just turn to God. And so your own right hand cannot save you. And so the question then is, what can? If we're in this world and there's all this pain and all this brokenness and all our own sin, what can save us? And that is where the gospel comes into play. And this is going to be the core of our text today that we're going to keep coming back to, because we're going through Romans right now. And it's Romans 16 to 17. But this is the verse we're going to focus on right now, is verse 16. It says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek." And this is the focus today, is going to be on the gospel and the power of God. You see there, it's the power of God to save us. We don't have any power on our own to do it. But God's power at work in our lives, he's the one who can save us. And so we're going to take a bit of a look at the life of Jesus and at the gospel, and start to think about what Jesus really did for us and what that power is. And so because we talked about Job, and we've thought about our own experiences and the hard things we've gone through. But the gospel is that Jesus, the Son of God, he chose to come into the same world that we walk in and go through the same kinds of sufferings that we go through in order that we could have life in the end. And this is something that's it's incredible, because we can think, maybe my life might not be worth living because it's too hard, or maybe there isn't any meaning to it. It's too much. But Jesus says, I'm going to go into that world as well. I'm going to go in and I'm going to live in that world as well. You're not going to be alone in it anymore. You're not going to be alone in it anymore. And the thing is, too, when Jesus came, he's not some kind of robot. He didn't give himself like Superman-like powers where he just didn't feel pain. He was fully God, but he was fully human as well, which means he experienced heartbreak. He experienced, love and care and attachment for the friends around him. He experienced what it felt like when people said things to him that hurt him. He experienced all kinds of afflictions that we experience. He didn't live his life just with blinders on or with pain, numbing himself to the pain, but he experienced it all. He left all of the comforts that he had in heaven. He had armies by his side in heaven, and he had a throne that he was sitting on. And he had all of the people in heaven praising him all the time, and he left all of that to a world where people were going to curse him and hate him for most of his life. And he had insults thrown at him. And he had, one of his best friends who he cared about for his whole life betray him. He had some good things too. He had some friends to help him through. And he had meals around a table. He came because he's doing something good in all of this. When Jesus came, he came and he experienced all of this because he wanted to do something. The thing that he wanted to do is he wanted to give you life. He wanted to give me life. He worked. He's the one. We're not the ones who had the power or could work these things out. He's the one. It was his hands who worked. It was his heart that broke. It was his tears. His tears that he cried for us. It was the things that he experienced that are the things that are going to heal us. There's even times when Jesus was on earth, and even though he was God, he cried out to his Father, why? Just like Job did. And the reason he did all of this is because he saw something on the other side of what he was suffering for. And what he was suffering for was for you and me. He suffered for my sin and all my mistakes, to free me, to free you, to forgive me, to clean me of all my mistakes, all my guilt, all my shame, and all of yours as well. That's why he ultimately died. He did this. He did this so that he could have your presence in his life. Because he wanted you to be with him. Because he wanted you to be one of the friends that he could have a meal with. And you can have that meal today, but I've been thinking about this when I think about Jesus, that he died so that like 10,000 years from now, when we're sitting with him, we can have a meal with him. And we can eat with him. And we can be with him. And that relationship that is so broken can be restored. So Jesus he did this all. I mean, that's what he did. He laid down his life. He died for us, and it said there's there's no greater love than laying down one's life for their friends, and that's what Jesus did on the cross. He laid down his life for us, his friends. I'm gonna read now just a verse. It's an account of the life of Jesus from Isaiah 53. Just the first 6 verses. For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we would look at him, nor an appearance that we would take pleasure in him. He was despised and abandoned by men, a man of great pain and familiar with sickness, and like one from whom people hid their faces. He was despised, and we had no regard for him. However, it was our sickness that he himself bore, and our pains that he carried. Yet we ourselves assumed that he had been afflicted, struck down by God, and humiliated. But he was pierced for our offenses. He was crushed for our wrongdoings. The punishment for our well-being was laid upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. But the Lord has caused the wrongdoing of us all to fall on him. And so this brings us to what can save us. And the only thing that can save us is the power of God. Only the power of God can save you. Only believing in Jesus, who came and he lived and he suffered and he died for you. And he also rose again from the dead. And it's only by his power that you can be saved. So believe in him. Believe in Jesus. Put your trust in him. Wherever you're at, if you are in a situation like Job, turn your face towards him. Even if you're angry at him, even if you don't understand what's going on, turn your face towards him. Believe in God. Believe in the gospel, because there's nothing else. There's nothing else that can save us. Okay. So we're gonna shift a little bit now to what are we gonna do with this? So because the first verse was this. So for I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. So it's God's power at work in our life, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. But what are we going to do with this now? And that's where verse 17 comes in. He says this. For in the gospel, in it, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith. As it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. So the righteousness of God, what is that? It is God's goodness. It is God's perfect nature. It is God's plan and purpose for the world. And so in the gospel, God's righteousness is revealed, his wisdom and his good purpose for life. And it's for faith, our faith, or from faith. It's a bit wordy here, but it's from faith and also for faith. And so in some senses, what this is, or at least what I've seen this to mean, is that it's something that continues on. It's not just something that starts. It's for the beginning of your faith. When you first come to Jesus and you believe in him, the gospel is for that, so that you can have salvation. But it doesn't stop there. It's also for faith all throughout your life. And that's why, that's why he says, that's why it's written, the righteous shall live by faith. That is how we're meant to live. And that is what the call is here. And so if you are somebody who has never taken that step to believe, then that's That's what you can do today. You can put your faith in him. You can believe in the gospel. You can have faith. But if you're somebody who has been following him for a long time, we are also supposed to live by faith. So I want to ask a question, and that is this. So how are we supposed to live a good life? So he says here, the righteous shall live by faith. I kind of already spoiled the answer, but that's okay. The question is, how are you supposed to live a good life? And this question is asked like all the time. You see it in our culture, right? And one of the big things right now is look within yourself. Look within yourself. Get a whole bunch of books, get a whole bunch of advice, and just fix yourself. Like, just go ham, just work as hard as you can to make the world a better place. And remember, we've already seen in Job's life that doesn't work. That is not going to save the world. It's not going to fix things. It's not going to make anything better. And so then what is? If we can't find it within ourselves, where are we going to find it? And that's where we turn to God. It is by faith in his power at work in our lives. It is by faith in the gospel that we're going to live a righteous life. And a righteous life is a life that is good. It is the life that God has called us to. It's not just me doing everything that I think is right and being self-righteous myself and just trying really hard. It's the life that God actually has for me. The life that he says is good. It's being more like him. And the way that we live this life is by having faith in him. And this is supposed to be the way that we live. It's not just supposed to be just at the beginning. It's supposed to be the thing that brings us to Jesus. And faith is the thing that leads us also to baptism. And then from baptism, it's supposed to be the thing that we live our life by in every moment of our day. In our conversations with our friends that we don't know, like I don't know, we need faith because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's so many things that I'm scared of. I don't know if that conversation that I'm avoiding, I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know if somebody's going to say something that's going to hurt me. I don't know if I'm going to get sick or I might end up in the hospital. I don't know if there's going to be another pandemic. I don't know if our government is going to go downhill or if war is going to get worse. There's all these things that I don't have any control over. And none of us do. And so Jesus gives us a different way to live our life besides relying on our own strength and just trying to just run as hard as we can. And he says, you've got to have faith in me. You've got to turn your eyes off of yourself. You got to turn your eyes off of your problems and the things you're trying to control. And you got to have faith in me because I'm doing something here. I'm doing something here in this life, and oftentimes you're not going to see it. Oftentimes, when you're going to need the most faith, you're not going to see what God is doing. And you need to have faith in him. And that's how we're called to live. So that's why it said the righteous shall live by faith. The righteous shall live by faith. I'm going to just pray now, and then we'll have the worship team come up.